Welcome back. Shadowlands has had its drama, it had its delay. Getting to where we are right now has been quite the roller coaster journey with, of course, the usual, shall we say, windy road of World of Warcraft development clashing with a global pandemic. But now that we're under a week away from Shadowlands release, it is finally time to see where we are and what we can expect. An objective review of a WoW expansion at this stage is basically impossible, but this is basically my personal review, my personal feelings as we head into this next expansion. And of course, that I'm doing this video means that it is November, and that means we have November loot. You see, we do a fresh set of physical loot on Patreon every month, and we went ham for this month. This is our 2020 edition channel pin, and this is our Demon Hunter class pin. Lots of depth, a real nice luster to these, they feel great in the hand. And of course, there is then our fantasy art, perfect for if you want a bit of Enchanted Forest vibes within your home. And on that, by the way, it has been so cool seeing people share their art walls in their houses now that they've got a few of these. Really, really satisfying and motivating for the artists. And of course, everything here goes straight back into the channels and into game development, where, believe me, our art team is up to a lot more than I think what you think, and you'll see that soon enough. So thank you for all of the support. It's very inspiring. It makes a lot of very cool things happen, and it's just great getting stuff out to you all. So thank you, and let's go. First, I have to begin with how I'm actually playing. This is something that's vital to go through because, well, Shadowlands' strengths and its weaknesses, they're not really things that are going to apply evenly to everyone. So here is how I plan to play the game. I plan to bounce between 1 and 3 characters, right? I want to have my main, and then some alts and some other covenants that I'm going to be dabbling with. In terms of my gameplay experience, well, I am aiming for doing some moderate level Mythic Plus. That's one thing that I'm doing. Also, raiding. I want to get Curve on every single tier in the Shadowlands expansion. I'm probably not going to step foot in, in Mythic raiding or anything like that. As for PvP, I actually enjoy it a lot, and I'm going to dabble a little bit. Then Torghast is a feature that, as you'll know, I'm extremely excited about. I have a very positive vibe towards, so that's something I'll be doing. And then just general Covenant progression, cosmetics, that kind of Legion-like progression that doesn't make your character more strong, but is just real satisfying to do. That essentially is how I'm going to be engaging with this expansion, and of course, I am going to be doing it with a guild, and that guild does include, of course, many of my colleagues who work with us here on this channel. So, that's how I am playing. Let's then talk about how I'm actually feeling about this expansion. We'll kick it off with game balance. Overall, I'm actually feeling a bit worried about game balance. I mean, if you're looking at beta, just look at how Pelagos' soulbind threw the entire Covenant balance of Shadowlands completely off, to the point where I think over half of the Wowhead class writers were recommending Kyrian based on it. And we still don't know where the final balancing is going to be, even though it's 6 days away from launch. And what that does is it shows us how fragile a system with so many moving parts can be, and how a single thing can throw a lot off. Now, I expect this to be quite a mess, and if I was pushing high-level keys, if I was mythic raiding or trying very, very hard in PvP, then I would be deeply concerned about how much these elements could impact my enjoyment of the expansion, at least at the beginning. Now, as for me personally and how I'm going to play it, I'll muck through the balance issues. They might piss me off a bit, we might joke about them on our Discord, but I don't think they are going to be a game-breaking thing for a player like me. You see, from my perspective, in heroic level raiding, there's so much power to be gained just by playing better and knowing the fights, right? That's where a lot of your gains are going to come from. It's not like with mythic raiding where, if everybody plays perfectly, they still need to eke out an extra few percent throughput where they can. So, that for me overall means that my Covenant choice is still, unless things are really wacky, it still is going to be based off what I'm personally drawn to. Honestly, I am so much more of a chilled out and less of a try-hard, high-strung dickhead than I was in the past. So, provided Covenant stuff is not, the balance isn't bad to the point where my choice would significantly negatively impact my teammates, I'm going to be doing what I want. So that's my thoughts on balance. Gearing. Tell you what, I'm quite excited about gearing characters up in Shadowlands. The reason's really simple. Less RNG BS, right? I feel like my time will be better respected by a game that is, in terms of gear, a bit more simple. I can target BIS, right? I can get excited to hunt down bits of gear and knowing that when I get that bit of gear, I've got that bit of gear. Real simple. That plus, of course, the weekly chest being a lot more respectful of your time as well just means that for me, the equation of I'm logging into WoW to progress my character feels way more where I want to be. That basically is a pretty major reason why I want to push my characters forward in this expansion. Let's talk about renown progression. So, renown progression for your Covenant, I think, will be okay. I don't think it's going to be that thrilling, to be honest with you, but it's also not massively time-consuming. And generally speaking, the mandatory content of the Shadowlands expansion does not seem to be super overbearing to me. So that means I'll be happy enough to chase down that weekly renown carrot on a few characters so that I can make my way through my Covenants, do my epic Covenant campaigns, and get some cool stuff to play with, and of course, play around with my Night Fae Garden, which seems pretty neat. Soulbinds and conduits are another part of the progression. And basically, I think that they are fine in principle. In reality, I don't think they are that great. And the reason is pretty simple. Most of the soulbind powers are boring. Earning them is just not an exciting thing for me as a player. And as for why, well, I feel that spec-specific things like the Warlords of Draenor perks and the Legion artifact traits, I think those things can be quite exciting. But the thing is, they don't really exist here. Why is that? Well, because soulbinds are mostly for everyone, right? They're not class-specific or spec-specific. I mean, they kind of are, but you know what I mean, right? Pelagos is Pelagos, right? Everyone's going to get their Pelagos. There are spec-specific conduits, as an example, but in my view, looking at them, they're often not that exciting. So honestly, you could remove the entire soulbind and conduit system, and basically, I don't think you'd really notice. The swapping of them, as we've covered before, is extremely annoying, I'll say that much. My solution to that is basically just, I'll do the bare minimum, and otherwise I'll ignore this system. Because to me, what this is it's just generic progression goop. It's just stuff. It's not that exciting. That said, I'll just be going through it as a consequence of doing things I want to do in the game. I'll be unlocking conduits by accident, by happening to do the dungeons and the things that I want to do. I'm not going to be farming Stygia, right, for, Venari's conduit gacha system. I'm not going to be doing that. So for me, I think this system is a swing and a miss. But I think that my well-honed ability to ignore annoying World of Warcraft system design is going to come in and save me here. This system may be very annoying if you're a high-end player and you really care about this stuff, but I just don't. And that means it's not going to factor in as really much of my Shadowlands experience, so it's not going to really detract from my gameplay experience that much. Next, a big point of mystery, the Maw, right? This is a part of your progression, and it's also some content. Overall, it is a daily and weekly thing to do, and it's okay. It's not really that exciting. So, right, you want Venari rep, you want to get some Stygia that can grant you some random conduits, things like that. I think legendary powers as well, and those are basically both via a random system, as well as Torghast and the Maw upgrades, as well as, some gem slots, or sockets even. So what's the actual content? Well, it is doing 2 weekly quests for Venari, it's doing a selection of daily quests, and then both rares and world events. Now, is this a infinite grind? No. Stygia is not infinitely grindable because of the Eye of the Jailer mechanic, which basically just, it's like your stars in GTA or something like that, where the longer you spend there, the more you do, the Eye of the Jailer goes up and up and up, more forces are sent after you, to the point where you're basically just going to die, and that will limit your farming. Now, Stygia does drop from rares and events, so technically you could no-life it by trying to get every single rare and every single event per day, but the Eye of the Jailer will shut you down. So the overall gameplay is to do your weeklies, and to do your dailies, and then to kill some rares and do some events until Eye of the Jailer basically just becomes too extreme for you to be able to handle it. And by the way, also, you do lose Stygia when you die, but you get it back when you actually return to your body, so that basically operates like souls in Dark Souls. And overall, I would say this is just fine. The zone is not mega interesting, and it doesn't really make good on the promise of no mounting being fun. I think the zone would have to be smaller and a bit more tightly designed to actually work as an on-foot experience. I do, though, think that this could be a lot more fun in patch 9.1 or 9.2, but right now it's probably, like 35, 50 minutes a day, and it's kind of bland. It's not a reason to play the game. It's also not a reason not to play the game. My overall opinion here is I think the team basically just ran out of time. Mandatory grinds have been something worrisome for players as of late, and the situation here is interesting because the mandatory content does seem fairly reasonable in Shadowlands. There is no, infinite artifact power to be farming. There's no diminishing returns to be fighting against. So I basically will feel like I have, technically speaking, less reasons to play, but more reasons to actually want to play in a way, right? Because there's less of that mandatory goop to go through. I'm sure there will be some annoyances here for the top end players though, those who really, really want to just go get all the Stygia they possibly can. But I will say that I think that for the average Joe, this is all going to be grand. If you want to no-life the Maw, you'll be a bit angry, but really, I think it's grand. Getting your renown every week is a pretty nice, quick experience. Essentially, I do think you'll be able to get the stuff you need to get done each week on your characters pretty quick, and that will then just free you up to do, well, what you want. I think that's how it should be. Let's talk about story and zones. Honestly, I don't feel super connected to the story of this expansion, and I'm somebody who's been in beta. And the reason why is pretty simple. The story stuff just does not feel super Warcrafty to me. Like, it's grand, yes, but I say grand not as in grand big, I mean grand as in the colloquialism, but I still say this as somebody who's very much into the lore, and basically I think the Shadowlands stuff is really quite nerdy and academic. I think your average Joe player is going to just see it all as stuff. I don't think they're going to feel it. WoW, I think, is struggling as it moves away from the events and the characters and the setting, of course, that established the franchise. And Shadowlands is a sort of bold step into the beyond and all of that, and it's one that I am really quite happy to, ride along for, but I am just a little bit suspicious. Recently to me, WoW lore has felt like nerdy EastEnders, right? Like EastEnders with a massive lore book. If you don't know what that is, basically, I just mean it's kind of like a soap opera where you got this tiny cast of characters and all these big dramatic moments. And I think what Blizzard wants to do is like a George R.R. Martin style thing of having an incredibly deep world that is explored via a cast of characters and their relationships. But I think that in WoW, they never really give those characters enough time and focus for it to actually play out. Blizzard kind of keeps on focusing on the big story moments, but they rarely end up putting enough, time, and I guess the story doesn't often do enough work to earn those big moments, and I think part of that is the limitations of it being an MMO, and I think Blizzard would admit that too. So for me, this has all meant that after looking at Shadowlands stuff, honestly, I'd love to see the next expansion return to Azeroth and be a bit more traditional and Azerothian and Warcrafty. I think that Battle for Azeroth was supposed to do that, but I think that its storyline was an utter mess, and I think Blizzard basically would admit that too. As it stands, I'll say this, I am cerebrally interested in where Shadowlands goes and what it means, but I'm not massively emotionally invested in things like Sylvanas. They kind of lost me in those things. Now, moving to the zones, I think the zones are very good. For me, creatively, they're like a little bit flat. I don't think they're mega creative in concept. To me, they do feel like a fairly generic vampire zone, shiny place with darkness below, cycle of nature, might makes right. Now, they do some nice things within those zones, but personally, rather than those kind of big, very concept-driven zones, I would almost prefer zones that just feel more like lived-in places in a world. I think that maybe shows a bit of a bias on my end towards what I like in stories and probably towards those older zones. I mean, I'd love to see a zone with Westfall's scope and vibe, but on a big budget. But still, I will say this, Shadowlands does have a real solid bunch of zones. They look absolutely gorgeous. They have got incredible music. They actually have really fun campaigns and stuff to go through as well. So it is a really good space to be in. I think I have some different personal preferences, that's all. Leveling is grand. It has had its ups and its downs over the beta. It does feel, though, like we get 4 separate stories rather than one big continuous one, which is still a little bit disappointing to me. But overall, I do think it's actually pretty good, right? The leveling flow by actually just following that core campaign is quite nice. It does actually feel like you're playing this, story that's got like a good bit of pace within each zone as you go through all of the intrigue, and there's clearly stakes in all of them. So I actually think that's really quite good. Now, there might be some little bumps along the road in terms of some of the minute balancing of XP and stuff like that, but still, basically, I think it's a pretty good fun experience. We've then got Threads of Fate, which is the leveling system for alts, where you don't follow the story, you kind of just do the side objectives and stuff. And I think it's a great idea that just hasn't seen enough work. It will function just fine. To me, the idea of switching your brain off and just demolishing the content of the zone in terms of side quests and bonus objectives is a fun enough thing, but I would like to see more iteration in future patches. Rounding things off, Torghast, look, you've heard it before. Awesome. It is great. I love Torghast. It is so good. Basically, whenever I play Torghast and I look at the design stuff there, a big smile comes across my face. Do you know what that means? It means I want to do Torghast on multiple classes, on multiple specs. I am excited, actively excited to see when BlizzCon rolls around, what do they announce for Torghast? And you know what? I think that is basically like the best thing I can say about it, really. I'm excited about it now and for its future. Another thing to mention is just general rewards and things like that. Essentially, right, this is like Legion, but to a lesser degree. I would have loved to have as many tints and unlockables as you did with the artifacts. You don't really have that. You do have your Covenant mount and your back and your gear set, and those are all actually really cool and satisfying to unlock. So I'll say this, it's good right now, and I'm going to be doing that on multiple characters. I'd like to see more of those time goes on, like how Legion had its class mounts. So I would like to see, maybe tintable sets in a patch where you choose the tints. I'd like to see class tier sets, more Covenant rewards, things like that. But we're on to a good start. Next, Shadowlands versus BFA. This might be what you've been waiting for. I'll say this, almost every spec in the game feels better to play in Shadowlands than in BFA. That is a humongous thumbs up. That means that when I go to do some dungeons with my friends, I will have more fun. This is so much better than BFA. That is good and important. Zones. I actually do think the zones are, a bit better than the BFA ones in terms of core storytelling, right? When you're going through those linear campaigns, I think it works pretty well. Also, unlike BFA, the experimental features of this expansion, which is mainly Torghast, are bloody brilliant. So I would say, in all of the core regards of what a WoW expansion is, yeah, Shadowlands is better than BFA. Let that be your soundbite for this video. I've had a lot of slightly negative feeling things towards this video because it is a mixed experience in some ways, but let that be the main thing. This is better than BFA, and I would say by quite some damn margin. So the core point of this video, look, if you are an average Joe player like me, you want to dabble about in a big menu of content, this will not be as good as Legion, I personally think, but it will be a lot, hear me, lot better than BFA. Now, whenever I rate things, right, because everyone likes to do a rating out of 10, sort of, right? But whenever I do a rating, I use the whole scale. If I think something's a 3 out of 10, I think it's the 3 out of 10, I don't want to do the IGN 7. So to give you a rough vibe here is my thought. BFA was a 4 out of 10, maybe a 5 out of 10 for me personally. I would say that Legion was an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10. And I would say Shadowlands is, depending on how you play, if you're a super high-end Mythic player, maybe it's a 6 out of 10. If you're an average Joe, it's like a, sort of a 7, 8 out of 10, something like that. It's not completely perfect. It will have some little pain points and frustrations, but largely speaking, I think those things are outweighed by, they're outweighed by the good things. Look, if you like the story and you like Torghast, you like the setting, you're not a big try-hard trying to do the mythics and stuff like that, then I think you will have a blast. But if you're a super big Mythic Raider or super high-end PvPer, well, the PvP doesn't really seem to have seen that much love. And if you're a big Mythic Raider, then look, it'll probably still be better than BFA, yes, but you'll certainly have your gripes with some of the systems. So that's essentially the core. Let's then talk a little bit about future stuff. In terms of promise, Shadowlands has a lot of potential. I mean, I'm excited to know, where did Varian Rin go when he died? What's going to happen with Arthas, you know? Where the patch is going to take us? What the hell are they going to add to Torghast? Who are the first ones? What are the first ones? Who are the strange anima broker people in Oribos? Where are they from? Are we going to visit them? Who the hell knows? Right? That's all pretty fun. I think, look, Shadowlands is going to have some rocky problems, maybe, especially towards the start, but I'll tell you what, it is a far less scuffed base to start an expansion from than BFA was. Far, far, far less scuffed than BFA. So no matter what, we're going in a better direction here. So there you go, that's my personal thoughts. I do have my gripes and all of that stuff, but here's the thing, I also am able to, in my head, understand that there are good things and there are bad things. Personally, I am able to look past some of the less good things and focus on the really fun things. And that's how I'm going to enjoy this expansion. I can't wait for Monday night. I cannot wait to get in with my guild, to sink my teeth into a WoW expansion that doesn't feel like it's fighting me every step of the way, like BFA did. I just want to play some good old pure WoW. And I think I'm going to get what I want. There you go. That is my personal thoughts on the Shadowlands expansion. So, thank you for watching, and with that said, I will see you next time.